Batman. Hey, everybody. We are super excited today because we have an awesome, tacular special guest with us today to talk about his new book, Batman Resurrection, here on Two Geeks and a Microphone.
Hello there. So who talks first? You talk first. I talk first.
I talk first today. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this super duper special episode of Two Geeks and a Microphone, where we have the one, the only Mr. John Jackson Miller with us. And I am your co-host, Mr. Steven Boster, along with Mr. Michael Shanks, the most beardiest dude I know, who's here. Mike, say hey to everybody.
Good afternoon to all you geeks out there in Geekdom land. And today, the hello there was extremely appropriate, considering we have the one and only author to Kenobi, John Jackson Miller.
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah, John, thank you so much for joining us today. We are super excited.
A return engagement, as I have the mug to prove it.
Yes, thank you very much for that. Yeah, I was really happy when I messaged you and threw out the invitation for you to come back, and you said, "Yeah, my kids use your mug all the time." I was like,
"Oh, thank you." Oh my goodness. Well, we're here today, everybody, because Mr. Miller has written an incredible book called Batman Resurrection. Now, you can see behind him, he's pointing to the book, the cover of the book there. Mike has shown his cover of the book. I don't have a cover of the book because, yes, as you guys well know, I'm an Audible guy. I love my audiobooks, and I have it on audio, and I am thoroughly enjoying this book. And so John came on and was very gracious to accept our invitation to come. And so we want to do due diligence and justice to just the work that he's put into this book, what it's like to be writing this story. Mike has tons of questions because you guys all know that Mike is a super big Batman fan, and especially the Michael Keaton Batman.
Yes.
And so this is what was super special for us. So again, in front of everybody, John, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We feel honored that you've taken time out of your very busy schedule to hang out with us. So thank you.
That's quite all right. As I said before, this is my one podcast this month because I'm in the middle of writing the sequel right now.
We are honored. Thank you.
That is great. Yes. And so last time, everybody, when he... Oh, I'm sorry, Mike. I
can't wait for the sequel. That's going to be amazing.
Yeah. So last time he was on, I ordered the special cover of the Old Republic, and then which John, thank you so much for doing that. Greatly appreciate it. And so
those are reprinted in March.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Ooh, just saying, everybody, if you get a chance to get it.
And volume two was just announced last week. It comes out in October.
Ooh, okay. Good to know. Thank you. I'm writing that down, actually, before I forget.
Yeah, that one will have all of my Lost Tribe of the Sith comics and all of my Knight Errant comics. And so those two volumes, by the end of October, you can get 2 hardcover volumes that will have everything I did for Star Wars at Dark Horse, with the exception of another book that just came out a few months ago, which is Star Wars, The Old Republic. Not The Old Republic. It's Star Wars Rebellion Volume 2. That's what it is. That has just my very first comic book I did for Dark Horse in it. And
I do want to go here in the beginning and give you a big shout out. Everybody go to farawaypress.com. That is his website for him, where you can order the books. He actually even has a link to his eBay site where you can order the signed copies if you want signed copies. And so if you want to help support John directly, I would encourage you to do so. That's how I did the with the Star Wars, the Old Republic. I wanted to support him and what he was doing. So if you want to get signed copies, that's the place to go. So farawaypress.com. And that's covering me up a little. Hi, everybody. No, I'm just kidding.
I
Okay.
love on your website when you go to your story, your origin story, and it says what happens if your mother never throws away your comic books, then you too can spend your career strip mining your childhood.
I think I've said this in other places, but I had a pretty decent childhood, certainly, relative to some of the folks that I hear from. They'll I try to pay back a little bit, I guess, to the to the other folks, because my mother was a grade school librarian, so we always had books in our house. She never threw my comics away, as you said. She also was a fan of movies, would take me to go see movies with her in the theater. My dad was in, he was in electronics, but he at least taught me the science and other stuff. And my older sister, she, was into all of the pop culture stuff before I was. So she introduced me to everything from Monty Python to Carlin to Star Wars to James Bond, all of these things. I never wanted for having all the stuff, and so that formative part was important. I think the other kind of major moment shows up really right when I start high school, and basically all the other kids that were into comics and role-playing games and video games and everything else in middle school, they dropped all of that. Literally my best friend on the bus the first day said, John, we don't do that stuff anymore. We're in high school now. It's all about sports and girls and cars and everything else. And I'm like, well, that's great. Why don't you give me your comics? He did. And
Nice.
I ended up absorbing everybody else's collections, and that sort of marked where I became the professional geek, or whatever you want to call it. And that really kind of set me on a path.
Nice, very nice. Well, Stephen and I continued our geekdom through high school, so
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, I mean, there was a whole year where I just didn't know anybody else who was into anything, and we had a situation where two schools merged, and we kind of ended up getting, we kind of ended up getting a group of people who were more amenable to this sort of thing, and they're still friends of mine now. But for a while there, it was the mistake I made was I sold all my original D&D stuff just because when anybody around.
Oh, wow.
And it took years to get it all back.
Yeah, and those original D&D books are worth some money too.
Weirdly, it's actually the second edition stuff that was crazy expensive. Because that was when TSR was failing and they didn't print as many. And so
I didn't know that.
I did actually sell off a lot of that stuff a couple of years ago, just because I was worried about it, starting to get, time would take a toll on these things after a while. And in particular, all that old stuff. By that point, I was actually running a magazine about comics and games. So I was getting all the stuff free from TSR. And so in my house, I had all this stuff. And the problem was, after a certain point, the shrink wrap deteriorates, and it pulls and warps and everything. And the people that are really into this stuff as a collectible may know what to do with that. I don't. So
Wow.
and so I sold all the rare stuff off because I'm like, yeah, I first of all, it's silly to me that this stuff would be as valuable as it became. But also, it's you know, yeah. Can you imagine a day when people were going to be as crazy about condition, about games and video game cartridges and things like that, and action figure packs, and
Yep.
we didn't care about any of that packaging, and all we did is we knew comics. We understood, okay, yeah, comic books need to be protected in the right kind of plastic, and
Paper,
you can walk around. I can walk around in my collection now and find the wrong kind of plastic because I can see the little shards of plastic on the floor. But no, I mean, we never would have thought to save any of the other stuff, especially because the idea was these are games, you're playing them. I don't know. All of this is a digression from the book, but it does.
We're just connecting on our geekdom. I love it.
I mean, I'm a collector of Kenner original Kenner Star Wars action figures, and it amazes me to this day how much a little tiny plastic blaster is worth. And when we were kids, man, we lost those all over the place, and or the Jawa with the vinyl cape. That's the most expensive Kenner action figure there is.
Yeah.
And you can't find those things to save your life.
And that's another thing where I would on some of these things the plastic will turn. I mean, and the windows will go, it will start to brown and things like that the and it's just all because it was never intended to, sit in your room in the sun for 20 years.
Meant to be played with.
Well, it's funny. I had an original Stormtrooper that I got, and he was quite yellowed. And I'm in several collecting groups on Facebook and stuff, right? So, and then there's people out there who suggest how to whiten the Stormtrooper, and then there's other people who are like, no, you don't do that. You're going to degrade the plastic and blah blah blah. So I had posted that I was going to try and whiten my Stormtrooper. Oh, you would not believe the hate I got for that. It's like,
oh no, it's yeah, it's no, I was editorial director at Comics Buyer's Guide when, and I say when we introduced, because we really introduced fandom to CGC, the idea of slabbing books. And there was in that early period, restoring a comic book, the label for a restored comic book was a kiss of death. And fast forward a few years, and even the company itself is doing pressing the stuff that we were told you can't do. So these standards, of what's allowable and what isn't, they change and everything. But I go back to those original action figures. My first three action figures were a Darth Vader, a R2-D2, and a C-3PO. And the C-3PO, the figure's leg had been when they did the mold, the leg was actually fused to the rest of the body. And would not move, and so my dad broke it and put a pin in his leg, so he kicked like a rocket after that. And I later would do that for my daughter with a big tauntaun. But again, I suppose those things are no longer mint, but at least there's a story attached to them.
Exactly. I mean, I try to keep my figures mostly original, as much as I can. But then there's a certain point, like the Princess Leia blaster. It's like a couple $100 for that silly little
You're
blaster.
kidding me.
No, I'm not. Well, the original one, the very first one from the Star Wars run.
Yeah,
Those
yeah,
are
the
the
tiny
most
one.
expensive. Yeah, and I think that one is more of a blue, and then the later ones are more of a black. So the blue ones are more rare, so they're much more expensive.
I'm
And
gonna have to see what I've got. That's crazy. It's
you could
those
you could go down some rabbit holes with
those things would always be, the shrapnel in the bottom of the box that they were being kept in
Right.
my house, and like the like the potato chips at the bottom of the machine. I mean, it's a little. I would find these things all the time. I should go look for that stuff. But again, that was something that nobody knew to keep at all.
Right, exactly.
What was the point of it?
But yeah, so like I think I do have a repro blaster for my original Leia, and it's like, well, I'm not spending hundreds of dollars just for a little tiny plastic gun. I'm sorry, I can't see doing it, Yeah, so I understand the pain of collecting and stuff like that.
Real quick, everybody, if you're just now joining us, we are talking with the man himself, Mr. John Jackson Miller. If you want to check out his website at farawaypress.com, please do so. You'll find all more about the man himself, as well as the books he's written, comics he's been a part of, Star Trek, Star Wars, and even if you want to get some signed copies of some stuff, he's got a link to his eBay store, so you can do that. Okay, real quick, we are here to talk more about figures. I'm just saying. No, I'm just teasing. I'm teasing around. This is interesting, though.
Action figure collecting with John Jackson Miller.
Yeah.
I have no Batman action figures at all.
Really? I got a few.
Yeah.
Not as many as Star Wars, but
yeah.
That's funny. So I know when we were talking about this, about doing this whole episode, especially with, you've written this book, Batman Resurrection. Mike told me, he goes, "Oh, Steven, it takes place right after Batman 89, which is his favorite. Excuse me, the movie." And so we've always had a joke going on about, does Batman kill people and all that kind of stuff, in the stories and things like that. But and so he goes, this takes place right in between, and I'm like, oh, so we're like, we've got to start this. And so Mike is much farther. Everybody just admittedly, Mike's much farther in the book. You're about how far away, or how far are you in the book?
According to Goodreads, I'm 86% through the book.
It's crazy. Goodreads keeps that.
I love Goodreads.
That's around word 90,000.
Oh, do you have like where you like to say, I like to write this many words for a book?
Yeah, I actually have an Excel workbook where I have every novel I've written and the daily word count. And what I do is and I mentioned this before the podcast, I'll actually put my previous books up against and my where I am relative to deadline, or relative to completion rather. I'll put that up against whatever I'm working on at the moment, and that gives me a way of saying, all right, I'm on the pace that I was on with this book, or I'm on the pace that I was on with that book. And that's important because I can usually remember how freaked out I was trying to finish each of the individual books. And
I can't imagine. Yeah.
And what you're looking for is a nice relaxing cruise to the finish, instead of something where you plan to do this chapter or plan to do that chapter, and you realize, okay, I got to wrap.
So for you, a daily word count or a plan that has word count based upon what you've done in the past has been a great motivator for you in terms of writing. That doesn't make it as overwhelming.
Even going back to when I was editing magazines, Comics Retailer and Scry Magazine and Comics Buyer's Guide. Even when I was doing that, I was always benchmarking myself. So I kind of had an idea of whether I'm going to have a weekend or whether I'm going to do this or that. And again, it's not like shoveling coal where you have to get a certain number of words in to be able to complete the book. There is a moment, and it's always a very happy moment, usually in the midsection of writing, where you are no longer caring about the word count, and you're now starting to say, okay, here's how many chapters I have left based on my breakdown of the outline, how many events I have to actually illustrate. That can either be frightening or not. Because I have a lot of stuff happen in my books. I have my chapters are between anywhere between 50 and 80 chapters, and so there was a time where you would hit chapter 20 or chapter 30, and you're almost done. But no, it's really the book is as long as it is, and you just want to try to have it not be something where you were rushed at the end.
Well, I will say this: that one thing I've really enjoyed so far about, speaking of, all the different chapters that you have, is it's fast paced. I feel like, something is always happening. It's moving through this. There's nothing so far where I'm in. There hasn't been anything I've been like. We have a running joke in some movies and stuff and shows we watch that's called a Steven skip, where I'm like, okay, let's move it along, kind of a thing. And some people will ask me, some people from the show and some of our listeners will ask me, so did you Steven skip any of this? I'm going to tell everybody right now, so far, I have not Steven skipped anything in this book. Because you always have something happening and going on. And I wondered if that was because of why you have like at least 50 chapters. Cause I think this has 50,
50. It's 50, 52 plus a prologue, which means, or 52 plus a prologue and an epilogue, I think, which is the same as 52 cards plus the jokers.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I love that. I love.
Then I did the thing with the Star Wars: The Living Force, which is the book that I did last last April. That was 60 chapters, and that's 12 members of the Jedi Council times the 5 pirate groups that are in the book. And so it's and again very low level.
That's fun though.
That's
awesome.
So. No, I do stuff like I hide the number 560 in most of my books because that was my grandfather's ship in World War II. He was chief machinist mate on LST 560, which went into Leyte Gulf, went into various places in the Pacific Theater, and those ships didn't have names other than the number. So I've been whenever I just need a random number, if it's not 560, usually it is a factor of it or something.
Well, there's a fun Easter egg, everybody. How cool is that?
In fact,
scavenger hunt for that stuff. And again, it's. I'm not a very big person on hiding people's names in books or people I know Tuckerisms. I'll do some, but the very first time I had a Star Wars comic book come out, that's the second one I did where I hid the names of some of my high school friends in the names of some criminals that were just random characters that were never going to be mentioned again. And I discovered that they had Wikipedia pages that afternoon when it came out. And I'm like, okay, can't do that anymore.
Oh, wow.
Huh.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
No idea. Interesting. So how did this whole with Batman Resurrection, how did it come about? Was it an idea that you had? Were you approached, or what propagated it?
I go way back, 1989. I was editing my campus newspaper at the University of Tennessee, the Daily Beacon, and
Oh, wow.
that summer I had nothing else to do because it was a very slow news time. So I ended up going to the movie as the reviewer, and
Nice.
I ended up going to see it 12 times. Because as I have written many times, and in the acknowledgments, I really feel that the movie redeemed comics in the pop culture, in the public consciousness, because for years, you did the Batman 1966 theme. For years, that had sort of been a yoke around the neck of comics fans, in the sense that whenever there would be an article in on the network news or local news or in the newspapers about comics and comic conventions or anything else like that,
Mhm.
they would end up being the headline would be Biff Pow Bam, comics
Yeah.
fans show up at this particular event,
Yes,
or
yes.
or holy moly Batman, comics are getting
Right.
serious or something like that. And
Yeah.
again, all of it was to belittle, or at least wasn't really to belittle us, but it was to put us into this pop cultural context, this cookie cutter shape that had been created by the Batman TV show from 1966 to 68. Pop cultural moment. It was a hit. It was camp. It was everything. But it had nothing to do by the 1980s with what was happening in comic books. Batman was not Adam West at all in the comics by that point. And so,
around that time, we got the death of Robin.
Well, that happened. All these things. The Dark Knight Returns. It happened in the middle of the decade.
Yep.
You get the Killing Joke. You get all these things. Michael Uslan, who had the rights to the movie, was desperately trying to get a movie made that would take the character seriously. And this is why we ended up having this backlash. Just when the news of the casting and the director came out, because they were associated with comedies, Tim Burton and Michael Keaton, and Comics Buyer's Guide. We had all these letters that came in from people that were just terrified. Somebody used the phrase, "This is going to set us back 20 years," and at the time,
I was one of the fans. I mean, I had been a fan of Michael Keaton, but I was one, and I'm a huge Batman fan. And I was one of the fans who was doubting Michael Keaton at the time, because I'm like, wait a minute, Mr. Mom is going to play Batman. And,
and the thing was, there were calmer heads that were saying, let's just wait and see.
Thank God we didn't have the internet back then.
Well, I mean, that was, the Buyer's Guide, Don and Maggie Thompson, they were saying, well, look, we know Michael Uslan. We've actually seen, Michael Keaton in Clean and Sober do a serious role. This might be different than what you're thinking it will be. And so people who actually knew these creators had more willingness, I think, to suspend judgment. I mean, the word that Prince was associated with it. Well, anybody who was a Prince fan would know he would really embrace this thing in a way that others wouldn't. This was not going to be just a random soundtrack entry in his catalog. He didn't do those.
Right.
and so when he ends up doing the album, he's more or less he's got a rock opera of his own with its own storyline and its own arc and everything. I did a big essay about it for the 10th anniversary of Comics Buyer's Guide. So it's something where people were very concerned. The studio ends up rushing out a unfinished trailer in I think it's December of '88. I think that runs with Tequila Sunrise, which ironically is a Michelle Pfeiffer movie. And more people go to that movie to see the trailer, I think, than to see the film, because that is the first time we see the Batmobile with the machine guns. And there's no Bat logo. They don't even have the name of the film. There's no music. There's no anything in that trailer. But it really does sort of lay down the marker that this is going to be something different. I was not so into these things. I was actually scared enough that I was not digging into all this stuff before it came out. And so I was not expecting much myself. And again, as I said, that first screening, that first night, that preview night screening with all the people in costume, which I had never seen before. It was a revelation. And as I say, I ended up going back to see it a dozen times. Now this is something though where there wasn't really an opportunity to do tie-ins connected to it that were just connecting to the movies, because there was already Batman comics, there were already Batman novels, there were already other things. Nobody actually had looked at this idea of, well, let's do something that ties just directly with the film version itself. That doesn't start to come in until and here we thank Batman 66, where they do Batman 66 comics. And then I remember at that time, which was like 2010, I at San Diego talked to the editor and said, hey, if you guys ever want to do Batman 89, I'm around. And he's like, you're the 40th person who's asked that. It's not going to be. Yeah,
I'm surprised you're not involved with because there is a Batman 89.
Well, let me get to that.
Okay. Sorry.
So Batman 89, the comics, those don't show up until about 2 or 3 years ago. And when they do, they come from Sam Hamm, who is a screenwriter of the movie. So one of the two screenwriters.
Right.
So he's the one that's involved with that. Him and Joe Quinones, who is one of my artists on Star Wars. He's in fact the artist that has done he did the cover for that volume 2 of Knights of the Old Republic, or the Old Republic, the thing that's coming out in the fall. And he did that cover 15 years ago. What? So yeah. The fact that those comics were out and doing well, the fact that the Burton version of Batman, the Keaton Batman, had showed up in the Flash, the fact that you now have a world where people kind of understand the idea that you could have a pocket universe version of things, based on just a specific film version. I mean, we got that in the Arrowverse with its Crisis on Infinite Earths, when they have they have Robert Wool show up as the Batman 89 Alexander Knox in that bit. People by 2024, when this first novel came out, people were much more willing to say, okay, this makes sense that we can, calve off this part of the iceberg, and deal with just the first 2 Tim Burton movies as the source document. And it happened that I had been writing Star Wars: The Living Force, and my editor, Tom Holler at Random House, approached me and said, hey, you saw Batman in the theater 12 times, didn't you? And I said, yeah, I still got the ticket stuff. And he said, "How would you like to do?" Well, right now a couple of books is what we've got on based on the Burton verse Batman, and I was like, yes, but it was one of those things where, I when I announced it, I said, this is a dream project that I never dreamed to ask to get to do, because I never thought it was even going to be a possibility. And then when it happened, we started coordinating with the Batman '89 comics team. The intention was not in the beginning to actually form a continuity. My intention really was more to not step on their toes or duplicate what they had done. It has happened, though, that I have been able to sort of mesh things more. And by the second book, it's much more meshed together. But the whole idea there was, their stories take place more than a year after Batman Returns, and I said, I'm going to hug the first movie. I'm going to be in between the two. That way, I still, I get the benefit of, being next to the thing that people have the most familiarity with, the first movie. I also get the benefit of characters from the second film are still alive and around. We just can't have them. I can have Max Schreck meet Bruce Wayne and Batman all day long, because it is understandable that at least the millionaires knew each other. We see that in the second film, and that Batman might have run into him too. That's entirely possible. We don't know that they did. There's nothing in the second film that said that he didn't. And then Selena Kyle is another one of those characters where she can't meet Bruce Wayne, but other possible places where that character could appear could happen. So anyway, Batman Resurrection came out in the middle of October of 2024, and I wrote it knowing that I was writing the sequel. And so there are major elements for Batman Revolution, which comes out this fall. Major elements for Revolution are embedded in Resurrection. Because I knew the whole time this was what I was building toward.
Oh, okay. Is Revolution before the second movie, or right after?
It's a direct sequel to Resurrection. I'm sorry. Resurrection is about 5 to 6 months after Batman. Revolution is it follows Resurrection. We're not saying how long after it is.
That's okay. Yeah,
but it is before Batman Returns.
Nice.
Okay. That's gonna be great.
I gotta say, I was very happy with your character choices in this. I mean, one, you brought back Vicky Vale. I was very happy with that, because we kind of get that. We get to see a little bit of what happens between Bruce and Vicky Vale, and we just got that little line in the movie. Well, I forget what he says, but she left, more or less. So I like how you fill that in. I love Knox. Knox has always been a favorite character of mine, and to have him back was just incredible.
He was the easiest to write because he was the character I identified with, because I was a reporter at the time.
Oh yeah, that makes total sense too. And then, since you have said it's been given away already, who we think is possibly the bad guy, when that is revealed, I was just like, my mind was blown. I'm like, oh, perfect choice. Just such a perfect choice. I loved it. And then I went back and looked up, and so apparently you used the original name of Clayface. You went with the original naming of Clayface, which I thought was interesting, that you didn't go with the Batman animated series version, you actually went with the original version.
Well, the trick with this is Batman is rooted in the 1939 version. The 1989 movie is rooted in the 1939 comics.
Right.
This is Batman with a gun still. In those comics, he actually gleefully kills all the world's vampires. He's it's much more a noir shadow phantom
He's
pulp.
even Batman Kills.
Yeah, pulp
Okay.
character. And what happens is they back that out almost immediately. So by the time 1940 rolls around, you've got Robin already, and
Right.
things are starting to soften up. But I think that the mood of the films, and this is the trick with me writing this thing. I'm always trying to match the mood of the films. What would Tim Burton do is kind of what I'm going for always. Tim Burton's Clayface, will have a freak show aesthetic the way that his other movie characters do, but he also will be a tragic figure because almost all of his characters are. And
Oh yeah, you nailed that. You nailed that for sure.
Yeah, and so and whatever it would be practical effects, and so it would not be CGI or anything else like that. And so I'm always, when I'm writing, trying to match what's in the world that you see on screen. People. And again, this is just what I do, whether it's Star Wars or Star Trek or something else. If I throw in there a vehicle or a stunt or a power that is just way off, you know it. You know it, and you say, okay, this is not consistent with it. This is not. It's sort of like why when you're watching Batman Forever, which is not part of the source document as far as I'm concerned. It's not a Burton film, although it pulls elements and characters and actors from the Burton films. But you can actually watch that, and as I was watching, there were moments where I'm like, okay, this is off, this is off, this is off. The neon sets it off because there was no neon going on in the first thing. But then with Jim Carrey and the thing on his head that's reading people's dreams, well, that's a superpower. And there's no supers in in the Burton world. I mean, there's spooky things, there's peculiar things, but even when Catwoman is able to walk away from falling off rooftops, she's always going through awnings or landing in kitty litter or something. It's not just the whole
Two lives left. I think I'll save one for Christmas.
Yeah. People are I'm very cautious to have there be no stunts or vehicles or whatever else that just don't seem to fit.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that insight and that attention to detail. Wow.
Oh, I love how you've put things all over Gotham, and you've given Batman ways to sneak into the shadows and disappear, or places he can put the Batmobile and stuff. I mean, you thought of some really cool stuff in this book.
This is the thing, and I do understand the folks who are kind of like, I really don't need to know all the logistics or whatever. But the thing is, this is a novel, and the novel is about the world as much as it is about the characters, and we have room that they don't have in a movie to show you these moments of most of the big moments in the movie where people will argue about or have the questions about it. well, why did that happen? How did that happen? What did this happen? And it's not necessarily the purpose of tie-in fiction to explain everything, but if you can get plot points out of it, in that original Batman review, I had several of the elements that you've already read in this book. Questions I had: where did they come from? Where did those characters come from? How did they get there? What if? How about this? I actually had the broad points of the plot of this novel, or at least part of the plot of this novel. When I proposed it, I had written that in a column in 1999 that I did in Comics Buyer's Guide, where I said, okay, here's how I can here's how I can do a sequel. Here's how you could use these plot holes, which are not really plot holes, but just things that were not explained,
Right.
to use them as springboards. And I do that all the time.
Oh, I love what you've done with the book, and I don't look at it as you having to explain everything away. It was like, oh, these are cool details that I didn't really think about, and I enjoyed them. I'm like, yeah, that's cool.
Real quick, Geek Girls Gaming, that's Angie, says that's incredible. So I think she likes what you have on that.
I appreciate that.
That's amazing that you've had the basics of the story down for that long.
And I had no idea that they were going to, let me go with it when I came up with it. This is a case where I really have had great editorial support. Tom Holler and Random House, and the folks at DC and Warner's. I've been at this long enough that I can kind of tell whether something is doable or not. and when it works really well.
So did they have specific plot points that you had hit, ideas that not so you had free reign on this?
No, I had Tom and I discussed things we would like to see, and dynamics that we wanted to have, but in large measure they're things I would have done anyway. So some of our favorite moments were just Bruce Wayne and Alfred in the kitchen or the lab talking, where you get to actually hear them interact, and you get Michael Goff's voice in your head, and you can hear him responding dryly to various things, Bruce responding to things, and putting them in different situations, putting them in public in different situations, and just imagining these things. One of the things we wanted to do was take advantage of the fact that this is a different Gotham City, a different Bruce Wayne, a different Alfred, a different Commissioner Gordon than in several of the other versions. We have a Bruce Wayne in the Burton movies, who is, he certainly is moodier than some of the other ones. But also we get from Batman Returns that Bruce Wayne is not, masquerading as, a irresponsible playboy. We actually get the notion that no, he's somebody who works with the mayor to try to stop bad things from happening. Power plants going up in the middle of town, things like that. Me and the mayor see eye to eye, and we're going to fight you on this. And so I had the notion that I wanted to have him out in public, doing that, these involve longer scenes sometimes. More scenes like Bruce Wayne and Max Schreck up in the boardroom. But so that element is different. We also have we have we have a version of Commissioner Gordon that is, I think, unique in all of the different Batmans, because he's much older than I think any of the other Commissioner Gordons are. I just was I just hit. I collect old TV guides. It's something I'm being treated for. It's terrible. But I was reading one from the last week of December in 1986 last night, literally, and there is a Murder She Wrote episode where Pat Hingle plays a retired police officer, and if Pat Hingle is already retired by the time he appears, or retirement age by the time he appears in the Batman movies, well, he's going to have a different take on what is what I now we have somebody who's been walking the beat for 40 years, and he's had every job there is to have in the police department, and now this guy happens and the Joker happens, and what's he think about these things, and what is their dynamic going to be? And you almost get a bit of a Batman is learning things not just from Alfred about doing what he's doing, but he's learning from Gordon about police work. He's learning even from Harvey Dent about what he can and can't do, and still give them cases that they can take to court. Again, kind of logistical stuff, but I mean, it allows you to get into some stuff that you can't get into in other books. Again, one of the exchanges I really enjoy in this book is Alexander Knox and Bruce Wayne. His relationship with Bruce Wayne is different from his relationship with Batman. And
he asked for the grant.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Can I finally get my grant?
Well, their dynamic is different because Bruce Wayne and Batman have to keep it different. Right. But it's also a case where he's a little more cautious about cooperating with him because Knox serves different masters. Sure. He has different drives. He has different responsibilities, and so we do get some of these things, which again, these are not moments we will ever see on screen unless somebody animates it. But
I wouldn't be opposed to that either.
They are fun,
definitely,
and we have a great audiobook.
Now that I haven't heard yet. Steven's been listening.
I'm listening to the audiobook. I love it. Absolutely love it. I will say, admittedly, I half expected for Shrek to sound a little bit more like Christopher Walken. I couldn't. Well,
he's not doing impressions of anybody. That's the interesting thing. He's
right.
If anything, he's probably a little closer to the animated series range on some of these guys, just because here's the trick. Narration and impression are two different things, and if you're going to do something where you're going to actually trying to be sounding just like everybody, you'll end up getting judged entirely on that. And is there any harder ask than to do a character when everybody's got a Jack Nicholson, everybody's got a right. Everybody's got a Christopher Walken, everybody's got a Michael Keaton. So I think the trick is whoever is on that side of things, always the producers and the creatives who are actually doing the voices. You always have that decision to make about do I want to distract from the narrative, or do I want to settle for settle into a voice that's in my range, because we have characters that are talking for hours. And so it's a long time to by the time you get done with these things. It's like a 16-hour book. So
It
you know,
is.
it's
Uh,
this happened with this happened with I did the Prey trilogy for Star Trek, where we brought back Krug in a fashion. Christopher Lloyd's character
oh,
from Star Trek 3.
yeah.
I got a photo of me giving Christopher Lloyd the books over on the wall over here.
Nice.
And that was something where Robert Petkoff was trying to do everybody's voices as close as he could as impressions, and it was really really hard because staying in his voice, he said, is just, you know, it's rough, you know, because Krug is always growling from down here, and you know,
Yeah.
it's one of those things you don't want to have somebody narrating the entire book like that.
Yeah. Well,
Wow.
the gentleman that you have doing it, what's his name? Will Dameron.
Will Darren, yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
he does a great job because I always knew who he was, if that makes
Oh yeah.
sense. You
That's
know what I mean?
that's part of the job. That is part of the job, and you know, increasingly we're writing the novels, whatever the novel, to accommodate the audiobook listener. It's one reason why
Oh,
I do a lot of chapters. Is people tend to listen in shorter bursts, but
yes.
also yeah, also you know, it makes sense to just have more breaks,
Yeah.
and you know, since we're switching in, you know, in my writing anyway, we're switching point of view characters a lot. You want to have that break there, you know.
Hmm.
So when you switch between Bruce Wayne thinking and Clayface thinking, you know, you're actually in different tracks of the audiobook.
Yes, and
Right.
I'm
And
guilty of being like, okay, I've got it, because usually I listen in my car
yeah,
or I'm driving or something, and I go, okay, I got 4 minutes left in this chapter. I'll just sit here for a minute, and then it gives me a good break point to know that, oh, okay, I can. Or if I'm
and
cooking dinner or
yeah,
something, I'm always looking at the time to go, oh, cool, this chapter only ends in just a few moments, or that kind
and
of a thing.
on Living Force, we actually went beyond that, because all the Star Trek novels, with the exception of my most recent one, The High Country, uh, all of them all had locator captions at the beginning of the chapters. So
Oh,
it would say, you know, chapter 7, Vulcan, and
yeah.
then you would get into it. And
Yep.
likewise, Living Force, because Living Force is a road trip book. We're in a different place every single chapter. Um, you know, one of the things that I said let's do is let's put a chapter, a heading saying where we are at the beginning of each one, because we're hopping around so much. The audiobook listeners really going to need that. It helps them get back on their feet when they, you know, have a 5 minute or hour break or something like that,
What an
or 3 or
interesting
4 day break.
concept. I've
And
never
so
thought about. That's so interesting.
and so that's like that. And again, the trick is whether to use it or not is another question. I mentioned I did not use it in Star Trek Strange New Worlds, The High Country. I used just regular chapter titles that, you know, felt like they came out of a Western. The
Gotcha.
reason I didn't do locator captions is because the crew is lost. If
Hmm. That makes sense.
Oh.
they don't know where they're at, I don't want you to know where they're at.
Right. So did you get any input on who the narrator is for the Audible?
No, you know, I am in a different, you know, part of. I work for Random House. Random House works for Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers has a licensee in what happens to be Random House Audio.
Okay.
But what will happen is, depending on the project, depending on what it is, on Star Trek, I was very regularly, you know, communicating back and forth with the producer, saying here's how this character ought to sound, or
Gotcha.
whatever. And I always provide that information no matter what, if I can help it.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. I had no idea how the narrator
Process
was
works.
chosen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's interesting. Wow. Cool.
What did you like best about working on this book? I mean, for you.
It was a no research kind of thing. I mean, scratch that, scratch that. There was a lot of research,
Sure.
but it was not the same kind. I did not have to do any research in the movie itself because I had memorized it. I did go frame through a few scenes just to make sure that certain characters that I thought were alive after the first movie. Lawrence, yeah, he goes to the floor, but he doesn't die in the movie. But and I did some research into the lore of Clayface and various other characters. But it wasn't a deep dive kind of a situation. What did take a long time is that this is the first novel that I've written really ever that is set on Earth in anything close to the present day. And so every time you hit something in the book, there's a sequence where Batman is chasing a bus through the streets. Well, I'm having to look up things like how much does a street light weigh? Or not a street light, but a traffic signal weigh? How much current is there on those lines if I bring them down? Oh yeah. How much? What can I do? And what can't I do? There's a whole sequence in a burning building where I'm having to find out how things actually work in a burning building. There's the autopsy stuff. Certainly, I had a really interesting search history for a while there. But that's exactly what I needed to do, and so no, I certainly I enjoyed being able to put these characters costumes on for the duration, and again it just it really feels to me like I don't know what you would have followed Star Wars and Star Trek with that would have been as recognizable as this, but it is comparable.
It is. I have a question from Geek Girls Gaming for you that says, what has been your favorite character or storyline to write, if you can share?
It's whatever the franchise that I'm working on now. Usually, if I'm not excited about it, usually the book is not going to be any good.
Okay,
sure. There are characters that are just plain fun to write. Knights of the Old Republic, the comic series, Zane and Griff, and the other characters. That was just a fun, circus act to be able to follow around. I'm really kind of. I'm a humor writer. You're sort of in disguise behind, science fiction and all this other stuff. I did some Simpsons comics some years ago where it was just glee the entire time because of writing. because I could just have the craziest jokes and references and things and know that they would see print. And that's the kind of thing I like to be able to do.
That is cool. I think she laughed at the comment you made there and stuff. She said she does need to finish the KOTOR books, the Knights of the Republic books, but she loved the games.
Well, that's the opportunity will come again, as I say at the I think it's the March 25th. It might be somewhere in there. That's when the first omnibus comes back out in reprint form.
Nice.
What's the target date for Batman? What's the site?
Revolution? We've simply said the fall.
Fall. Okay.
Sure.
So you don't have a date.
But we're.
Yeah, we should have a date.
We do, but we do, but I'm not telling.
That's
we're
okay.
Actually,
that's all right.
Good.
We're actually pretty close to being able to say more.
That's exciting. That's okay. That's great. That's exciting.
I'm trying to get as much stuff as I can do, done before. We have as I'm next at Emerald City Comic Con, and then I'm at GalaxyCon Richmond, and then I'm at Revolution Star Wars in Vichy, France, and so that's where my next 2 months will take me.
Hey, Steven, did Tom Hutchinson say he was going to be at Emerald City? thought he said something.
I can't remember if he said that or not. I'm not
There's
for
a
sure.
lot of folks coming to that show.
It probably is. Yeah. I knew
Tom
he was
is,
going to be in Chicago next
yeah,
month.
he did say Chicago because he suggested you come out to Chicago
Yeah.
and stuff. So I'm in the St. Louis area,
Mhm.
St. Louis metro area, and Steven's in Montana. And Steven's been talking about possibly going to the San Diego one, right?
I was until I found out how much it was, and I'm like, yeah, I can't
Good
swing
luck.
that.
No, there actually is a GalaxyCon starting in St. Louis. It's in October. The problem for me is it's during New York Comic Con, and so
Oh, gotcha.
yeah, it's it's one of those things. Everybody's aware of these things when they book them. It's usually the facility tells you what they got.
Right.
Well,
right.
if you make your way out to St. Louis, let me know, and
Yeah.
I'll come meet you.
Yeah. Even Geek Girl Sick Gaming, she said she wants to go to the New York one. We've got another podcast friends that we've made over the years, and the Three Geeky Dads, and they went to the New York one just this last year and had a ball. And so, man, what would be to do a link up with them there in New York would be fun.
That would be fun.
Things that make you go, Hey, John, we are Mike and I are we're just amateur writers. We're just learning how to write, and because everybody's got their own stories and stuff like that. For anybody out there that just wants to maybe they have a story they want to write, what advice would you give them?
First of all, if the question is always your characters or somebody else's. If it's your characters,
Yeah,
you're good. You can do whatever you want. If it's somebody else's, your choices are fan fiction or doing what I do. And doing what I do, I have never ever written fan fiction. I didn't even know what it was when I was a fan. Doing my own characters and comics, whatever, because there's licensing involved in there, and there are commissions and being able to sell things. That's just a whole different business. But what I tell people if they're writing, or want to write as a career, is to write anything and everything they possibly can, where people can actually see and read your work and respond to it, and you can get used to dealing with that fact that people are out there reading and responding to it. Whether it is writing reviews for the college newspaper, or blogging, or whatever it happens to be. Even fan fiction is helpful in that it gets people reading your work and giving you responses to things. The real trick is you got to get to something where you are accustomed to writing and have other people work on your writing and revise it or get you to revise it. And you also have to hit your deadlines. None of that gets into the next things you've got to do, having to do with marketing and sales and online presence. And that comes with just another basket of decision trees. What kind of an author do I want to be? How accessible do I want to be? How how do I want to actually deal with these things? And so that is something that comes along later. But just starting out, just write for people to read you wherever it happens to be.
Yeah, we're doing our own characters, kind of a thing. It's I mean, just and for me, I'm just I'm just an amateur writer, and I have found it to be fun. At my stage in my life, I didn't think it would be this kind of fun, but I'm like, this is cool creating this world. I'm not great at it, but I'm enjoying it, if that makes sense. And I thought, wow, this is really. Who knew? I didn't know. I mean, I've had people tell me in the past of a good writer and the things I've done in the past, but nothing like fiction or anything like that. And it's not even like, oh, I'm going to become the next great John Jackson Miller, kind of nothing like that or anything. But it's just been interesting. Geek Girls Gaming asked the question, how do you combat writer's block?
I look at my bank account.
Oh, that was
No,
quick.
No,
no.
that's a great
Nice.
response, though.
Again, a difference is because I'm writing for other people. The work is almost always contracted already ahead of time, so there's already a deadline. There's
Yeah.
already, I've got to. Well, it's. I mean, that obviously that's fast and funny and glib, but
Yes. But there's some truth behind that, it seems.
it is going to work. I'm going to work every day, and usually we'll have I'll have something where, okay, I'm stuck. I'll switch to a different chapter, or I'll just immerse myself in something. I do a lot of reading. I almost all the reading I do for fun is nonfiction, and
Oh.
I will come up with I'll come up with a fact or something like that
Oh
then I
yeah.
can blow up into something that
Huh.
is something that I can deal with.
In the
Um,
beginning, I love that interaction with what's his name, the professor doctor that he went to
oh
see
yeah,
at the beginning, and I was like, oh my
Josh
goodness,
Lender.
Austin
yeah,
Leonard.
yeah,
And see, as I started researching it, I knew I wanted to have him have the moment with the lighter over his hand, which is that's Gordon Liddy that did that back in the Watergate era. He would put the lighter under his hand, and I looked up. Well, I want him to actually explain what this is, and so I looked up and discovered the person that basically invented the lighter was Carl Van Auer, whatever his name was, and once I looked at him, I said he looks just like the character should look like, and so I included that fact too,
Nice.
and and all of this stuff ends up basically layering in it's not always the case that I initially thought, hey, I'm going to do this, but I will usually go researching, go looking for things,
yeah.
when I need a sailing ship from the 1700s and I want to have an accurate name for it, I'll go look up the history of. I'll get the name of the ship from one of my old Napoleonic Navy books, and then I'll go look up its history, and then I'll see, oh, it was here, 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 and here. I can tie this into this mystery, and I do that a lot.
Mm.
Nice. Very nice.
Very much. Very real quick. Geek Girls Gaming. She goes, that is so cool.
Yeah.
Do you outline, or do you just kind of want to? Okay.
I have to. It is the part of the process I hate the most.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm having to do that, that idea building before I'm actually filling in the blanks, the details, and everything else. And so,
Mhm.
but the licensors need to know what the story is about and what's going to happen in it, the
Okay.
broad strokes. But a lot of the time, now we do deviate from the outline when I'm actually writing. But it's your research to be filled in later.
Okay. Yeah.
But that is hard. That is hard comparatively to do, and it's one reason why I have almost nothing to my name in terms of books that I own, because I never write anything on spec. Because left to my own devices, I would never outline anything. And, but I think it's critical to actually being able to get the book done.
So
Yeah.
do you have the end already set when you start writing? Do you know
you got to where you're going to, but like it's like a sailing ship, you're going to go where the winds take you.
Gotcha. So you have a basic ending, but it could change.
And you may realize as the book goes on that this is not the real villain or something like that.
Right.
I mean, I will say, who Clayface turns out to be in the book definitely evolved as I continued to write thousands of words in his mind. And so he's a different character than I imagine he would be in the outline.
Okay.
I,
That's good.
the clay face. I'm right there in the novel, or just after where he's woken up but I loved how you started him off, and then his thought process. As
Yeah,
here's what's happening, and how did you say it earlier? Tragic
yeah,
character,
yeah,
and all, and
yeah.
that's interesting.
And again, this fits thematically because this book is very much about the theater. This book is very
Yes.
much about live theater in Gotham City. I really did a deep dive into it, and again, we're talking about research and found things. When I realized how much you know, in the play Pygmalion, I could draw upon. I'm like, okay, I'm going to incorporate these elements. When I realized how much of the stuff in the Tempest rhymed with it, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna bring in these elements. I discovered midway through a movie called Mr. Sardonicus, an old B movie, and I'm like, oh, this rhymes in a bunch of crazy ways that I had no idea. I and so there's a mention of that in there.
Nice.
And so that's the kind of stuff that you discover while you're writing that you would never have. Well, a lot of the times I'll try to put it into the outline, and that makes the outline 10,000, 15,000 words, and nobody needs that.
Another question that came up was, if someone is new to your works, where would you suggest them to start reading?
Well, that takes us back to something you said at the top. I have my website, farawaypress.com.
Yep.
Is broken down between Star Wars, Star Trek, and between comics and fiction and games and other things I've done. And so it's all sort of grouped together. And
Yeah.
within each thing, the Star Wars stuff is it's in different timeline chunks. For example, Knight Errant, at the top of the Star Wars page on farawaypress.com, there's a reading order for Knight Errant, which shows the novel, the comics, what order they go in. It also shows what there's maps there of the region of where the character is. There's also a free short story that's linked there. And increasingly, I'd like to get more of that online. But a lot of these things that I've done, I try to write to stand alone. The Living Force stands alone. The Kenobi novel stands alone. And many of my Star Trek novels, there are some that have a sequential order to them. The Prey trilogy, you're going to want to read book 1 before book 3. But otherwise, you're fairly safe in diving in somewhere, no matter where you are. I think really it's about what you're in the mood to read, and in that case, what I have done is said if people are looking for a Star Trek book that is the mirror image of this Star Wars book or something. I'll if you love the New Dawn book that I did or a New Dawn book for Star Wars, that really rhymes in a lot of ways with a book I did called Rogue Elements for Picard, the Picard series.
Okay.
The Star Trek novel Die Standing, which is my mirror universe novel, it is basically a lot of the things that Obi-Wan Kenobi faces in the Kenobi novel, except the villain is the one facing these things, or somebody who was a villain is facing these things. The themes are the same, the feelings are kind of the same. If you liked this book, you'll like that book.
And I see
Uh-huh.
Knight Errant got re-released under the Essential Legends collection too. That's
Yep. So it's all completely out again. It's completely out again. The comics are out in an Epic collection. The comics will be out again in October in Volume 2 of the big monster, the big omnibus.
Yeah, I'll
Nice.
probably be ordering that again.
Yeah, and so that will be about 2,600 pages, of
Woo.
which I will have written about 2,000.
Okay.
Wow.
Whew.
Dang.
Woo. Well, hey, I do want to be mindful of your time, John. We've actually gone over an hour already, and it's gone by quick. I'm shocked.
Well, we blew 15 minutes on action figures.
This is true.
That is true. Very much so. So everybody make sure you go to farawaypress.com. Make sure you check out his website there. I was just looking at, I did find the errant reading order list on there.
Yep.
Very nice. Very nice. And
Yep.
all links to where to buy them as well. And all, which is pretty cool. So, Mike, do you have any other questions that you had? I know you're got some burning questions.
So, is there anything, any hints that you can give us for the next Batman novel?
If you read the first Batman novel, you already have a lot of good ideas.
Oh,
Fair enough.
Right.
Fair enough.
Love
I mean,
it.
there are things in there that are not. They're just I don't do anything usually gratuitously or just to have a cameo or whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there are things that are going to be developed that you've already seen.
Yeah, everything is done with purpose, it sounds like.
And do you see any other Batman novels in the future?
My job is to stick to what we've announced. And
Okay.
I,
All right.
That's cool.
I never go beyond that. I can say, I've really enjoyed it for sure. I never ever thought that this would, be a possibility. And I've added, really kind of a to my repertoire of things. I already had Star Wars. I already had Star Trek. Talking about comic book sales history on my Comicron website. I've had that for forever as something I can talk about. And now Batman. I debuted a Batman slideshow at Twin Cities Con. Where I talk about the legacy of Tim Burton's Batman and how it connects to the work we're doing. I'll be at Emerald City, and we are doing a panel with me and the Batman '89 comics folks.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
And, this is the first place I think I've been able to announce this. So
nice.
That's
exciting.
Coming in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Very
all right.
cool.
And this is your
cool.
first time dipping your toe in a superhero universe.
No, I wrote Iron Man for a year.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Oh, yeah. No, I got my start at Marvel before I went to Dark Horse and Star Wars. So yeah, no, I
know that.
Yeah, I wrote. I did the whole year where Tony Stark becomes Secretary of Defense, and yeah, I've got the issue back there, but I have to grab it.
That's all right. That's okay. He's getting it. He's gonna get it.
Safely get it down here. Yeah, somebody just did a deep dive video on this issue on Amazon, or not Amazon, on YouTube. But yeah, that was the Tony Stark as Secretary of Defense arc, yeah, it was fun, and I kind of did the full Tom Clancy on that, where it was all the stuff that Tony Stark encountered, the military stuff, it was all real. I worked with a PR guy from the Air Force on various things. That was a fun thing. The real, you can't even find most of that stuff. It hasn't been reprinted, but the legacy of it is, there are a couple of characters that have wound up in the movies. So Christine Everhart, who's the reporter in the first two Iron Man movies, that's somebody we created. And then Walton Goggins' character from Ant-Man the Wasp, Sonny Birch, who just showed up again in What If. Well, he's from my very first. He was introduced in my very first Iron Man issue.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah,
He's a great actor. I enjoy
him.
him.
They flew both me and the artist out to the premiere of that movie, so that was kind of cool.
Oh, fun! Very fun. All right. Well, we are way past our time, John. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been great to just catch up and yes, talk figures. That was cool because Mike's all about figures.
Well, people can find me on Facebook, John Jackson Miller. Same for Instagram. Same for Threads. I think I'm farawaypress.com on Blue Sky, and JJM Faraway on the Bird site.
Okay. Yes, I do follow you on Facebook. I love seeing the pictures of all the cons that you're at and all the people that you meet. It's a lot of fun to see. So I'm so glad that you're posting that because that is fun.
It's about the hardest thing I do because usually you can't get a signal out of these places.
Very nice.
All right, Mike, anything else that you need to follow up on?
My dog just busted in here. Apparently
she missed you. She missed you.
All right. Well, thanks very much, guys. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. And everybody, thanks so much for joining us and being a part and just kind of hanging out with us. And please, please buy the book. It is worth it. Everybody knows we do our scales. And sometimes if we watch a movie, is it worth seeing in the theater again? Or is it worth buying on Blu-ray and those kinds of things? Absolutely 100%. This is definitely, it's worth a listen. So it's worth buying on audiobook, whichever platform you like to choose. And then also it's definitely worth getting a copy of the book as well.
Oh my gosh. I would have had it done had I not gotten sick. I got a bad case of the flu 2 weeks ago. And then once the flu hit, I didn't want to do nothing. So
you'll get there.
That is the only reason I am not finished. Otherwise, I'd be done with it.
So. Oh, I'm totally enjoying the audiobook and stuff. So everybody, please support John and stuff. Also, make sure if you want to get a signed copy, I think you've got some on your eBay site that you can get there through your website as well.
Faraway Press is the store name.
Faraway Press. Yeah. Right. All right, cool beans. Well, everybody, thanks so much for joining us. So glad that you could hang out with us. And Mike, I'll let you do the final little outro before I did the music.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us, John. I really appreciate you coming back on the show. And tell your kids thank you for using the mug.
Sure thing.
That was awesome. And with that said, please make sure and follow us on Facebook,
YouTube,
Rumble,
Twitch,
all those socials and such. Make sure that you give us a thumbs up, like, and subscribe. That way you'll be notified every time we go live. We normally go live on Saturday mornings at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. So this is a special edition of the show. But you can catch us every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. And with that said, yeah, I'm trying to think of my. Do not Steven skip this episode because we are much more better than the rest. There we go. Thank you for joining us today on the Two Geeks and a Microphone podcast. Tune in next week when we will have more news and reviews. Until then,
may the force be with you.